So now we want to start to work on the output in our cart screen. So down here in our return, let's go ahead and change this div. We're going to change this to a row because we're going to have a row with a couple columns. And in this row, our first column, let's say MD, we'll make it 8. So we'll have an 8 column. And let's also do call MD2. So that's 10. And now let's have a third column, MD equals 2. Okay. So the first column here, let's go and let's add an H1 and we'll just say shopping cart. Under that H1, we want to check to see if there's anything in our cart. So remember, we have access now to cart items because we use the useSelector hook to get the items from the state. And we're going to say if the length of the items is equal to 0, then let's show a message. So we'll say message, let's do a variant. We don't even need a variant. We'll just keep the blue, the info, which is the default. And then in here, we're just going to say your cart is empty. And we can also put a link in here to go back. So let's say link to, and we're going to set that to just slash. And inside here, we'll just say go back. And then we want an else. So else, then we want to show the items in our cart, which we're going to put in a list group. So I'm just going to put parentheses here, and let's say list group, and give this a variant of flush. And I'm just going to save that for now. So we just see shopping cart. Now, if we clear out we can clear out our cart by deleting what we have in local storage. So if I go to application and I go here and clear that out and reload, we should see your cart is empty. Go back. So now let's continue on. If our cart is not empty, in fact, I'll just go ahead and add something to it. Let's add this to it, add to cart, and now that message doesn't show. So now we'll continue on here with our list group. So in the list group, we want a list group item for every product in the cart. So we want to map through cart items and create a list. So cart items, and we want to map, and let's say for each item, I'm going to output a list group item, list group dot item, and this has to have a key. Since this is a list, we need a unique key here, which for that I'll just use item, and remember product is the ID, so item dot product. And then in here let's put a row, and we'll have our first column, which is going to be MD. Let's do MD2, and in here we're going to use the React Bootstrap image component, and for the source here, that's going to be item.image, because remember we're looping through all the cart items, and we're calling each one item, and then we're accessing the different fields. So we want the item image, and then for the alt, we'll use the item.name, and let's make this image fluid and also rounded. And if you're wondering where these fields came from, if we look in our cart actions, we assigned that stuff here from the database: the name, image, price, product, count in stock, and quantity. So we have access to all of these in the cart items for each object in the cart items array. All right, now underneath this column, so I just want the image there. Let's create another column, and as far as the size, let's do 3. And in here we're going to have the item name, but I also want to link to that product. So let's say 2, and in here we want to have an expression with backticks slash product slash, and then we want the ID, which remember that is in item.product. That's the ID. Okay, then we'll close that, and we want in here the name, so item.name. And let's create another column, We'll make this 2 wide. And in this, we just want the price. So I'm going to put a money sign and then item.price. And then a final column here, which will be, actually this isn't the final column, but set that to 2 as well. And this is going to be the quantity select, because I want to be able to change the quantity from within the cart. And it should then update the state and show over where it shows the price. It should change the price if I change the quantity. So I'm going to actually copy this from the product screen. So if we go to the product screen and we go down to where we put the quantity thing, right here, I'm actually going to grab the whole form control. And we're going to paste that in this column. And all I want to change here, let's see, so I want to change, instead of set quantity, because we don't have quantity in our component state, instead of doing that, I want to call add to cart again. So I'm going to just get rid of this, and let's say we actually have to dispatch it because it's an action. So let's say dispatch add to cart, and we want to pass in to add to cart the ID, which is going to be the current product, so item.product, and then the quantity is going to be whatever is selected, so e.target.value. Now I do want this to be a number, so I'm just going to wrap e.target.value in number like this. Okay, so if I change the quantity, it's going to dispatch add to cart. And then down here, instead of saying for this array, instead of product in stock, count in stock, we want item count in stock. And the rest should be fine. And then the last column, so after that, let's say call MD2. This is going to be the remove button. So for this, let's use button. Let's give it a type of button. And let's give it a variant. Oops, variant of light and on click. So on click, it's going to call, let's put a function in here, and it's going to call remove, say remove from cart handler, and it's going to get passed in the ID, so item.product, because we need to know which one we're removing. Then we can close that button, and inside here I'm going to put an icon, so I class name FAS, and let's do FA-trash. So we'll put a trash can icon to delete, and let's save that. Let's see what we got down here. So remove from cart handler is not defined, so let's just define this up top so we can get rid of that error. So under the use effect, we'll say const remove from cart handler. That's going to take in an ID, and for now we'll just console log remove. So I just want to see if this shows up, and there we go. So now we have our cart items showing up. If I go back to, let's say, PlayStation, and choose 2 here, add to cart, there we go. And I can change this, and that fires off add to cart again, and it should change the quantity. So if I look in state cart items, and we look at PlayStation, you should see quantity 1. But why is this staying 2? Oh, the value. So down where we have that, this right here, I have value set to QTY. That doesn't actually exist. We want this set to the item.qty. There we go. So now this shows the correct quantity. So now we want to deal with this side. Actually, let's add some padding to the H1s. So in index CSS, yeah, let's say H1, and I'm just gonna change the font size to 1.4 rem, and let's say padding 0.1 rem. Yeah, I think that looks a little cleaner. All right, so for this side here, we want to go down to, I actually don't want 2 columns, that's wrong. We just want, I don't want 3 columns, I just want 2. One's 8 and one is 4. Okay, so we want to deal with this. This is going to be like the subtotal, so it's going to have the price, it's going to have the amount of items, including the quantities, and it's also going to have a button to proceed to checkout. So let's start off with a card. So this will be wrapped in a card, and then we want a list group, and I'm going to give this a variant of flush. And in this list group, let's have list group dot item. So this is going to be an H2, and I want to say subtotal, and in parentheses it's going to be, let's say parentheses and then items, and this is going to be the total, not just the number of items, but also include the quantity. So if we have 1 here and 2 here, then we want this to say subtotal 3 items. Even though it's two actual items, we're ordering 2 PlayStations. So to do that, we're going to have to pass in an expression here, and let's take our cart items, and we're going to use the reduce high order array method. Now reduce takes in an arrow function with an accumulator and whatever the current item is. So I'm just going to call it ACC accumulator and CUR for the current item. And then what we want to do is take the accumulator and just add the current item, which I called cur. Actually, item makes more sense. Let's call this item. So take the accumulator, and then we want to add the item dot qty. And then the second argument that we pass in here is where we want the accumulator to start, which is usually 0, and that's what we're going to use here. So if I save that and we go back, you'll see subtotal 3 items. Let's actually change the size of the H2 as well. It's kind of big. So I'm just going to copy this, and let's say H2, and we'll do font size. Let's do 1.8 for H1. And yeah, we'll say 1.8 for H1, padding, not 0.1, let's say 1 rem on the top and bottom, 0 left and right. And then down here, we'll keep H2 at 1.4, and let's do 0.5 rem top and bottom. There we go, that's what I wanted. All right, so back to our cart screen here. So you have the subtotal. Underneath that, we're going to want the price, but we're going to want to also add the quantities together. So to do that, let's go right here. Let's put a money sign and then an expression, and let's take our cart items. And once again, we're going to use reduce, pass in the accumulator and the current item. And we're going to take the accumulator and we're going to add item dot qty, and then we want to multiply that by the price. So multiply it by item dot price, and the starting for the accumulator is going to be 0. And then we want to just make that a 2 decimal, so we want to just add on dot .2 fixed and pass in 2. All right, so let's check that out. So we have 889.97, and it's adding 2 of these and 1 of these, and this should be reactive. So if I change this to 2, this automatically gets set to 4, and this gets up to 979.96. Because when we change this, we're calling add to cart again, which goes through the action, sends the state down through the reducer, and it comes down into this. So really cool. All right, and then the last thing we want here is the button. So let's go, actually, you know what? I wanted to have No, we'll keep those in the same list group item. But let's create another list group item. And inside here, we're going to have our button. So let's say button type is going to be button. And I'm going to give this a class name of btn block so that it's displayed as a block level element. And I'm going to set disabled here if there's nothing in the cart. So we'll say disabled equals cart items dot length if that is equal to 0. And then we want an on click, and we're going to have a checkout handler. And in this button, let's just say proceed to checkout. So we need this checkout handler defined, so we'll go up here. Okay, so let's see if that renders. Good. And we can actually add for that. All we're going to do is redirect to shipping. We're going to redirect to logging. I'm sorry, logging. Login unless it has a query string of redirect set to shipping. So here, let's use history.push. So we're redirecting to, and let's put in /login. But we're also going to add a redirect and set that to shipping. And we're going to utilize this later on. Basically, if they're not logged in, they're going to go to login. If they are logged in, they're going to go to shipping. So we'll save that. If I click that, okay, so that's fine for now. We don't need to worry about that screen. What I want to handle next is the remove. I want to be able to click this and have it removed from our cart, both in our state and in our local storage.